My son and his wife said that I was no good for their children and forbade me to see them at all. At first it broke me, but then I realized that I would not let it go. So I bought out the school where my grandchildren were studying and changed the rules in my favor. Let's go back to the day it happened. The fork clinked against my plate, a sharp, solitary sound that sliced through the chatter. I froze, my fingers tightening around the stem of my wine glass. Across the table, Caitlin's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Liz, honestly, she said, her voice syrupy with mock patience. You don't need to play teacher for Emily's school trip. We've got it handled. The dining room in Jason and Caitlin's suburban Chicago mansion was a glittering cage, crystal chandelier casting prisms on the walls, the air heavy with the scent of roasted salmon and lavender candles. Guests, a mix of neighbors and parent committee members, shifted in their seats, their murmurs fading. My granddaughter Emily, turning 8 today, clutched her napkin, her wide eyes darting between me and her mother. I forced a smile, my voice steady despite the heat creeping up my neck. I just thought I could help. I've organized trips before. Caitlin leaned back, flicking her perfectly manicured nails. You're not in the classroom anymore, Liz. Stop meddling in our lives. Her words landed like a slap, and the room held its breath. Jason, my son, cleared his throat, his tight suit straining as he reached for the wine bottle. Mom, you're making this complicated, he said, not meeting my gaze. His voice was loud, careless, the same tone he used to dismiss waiters. I set my glass down, the base clicking against the mahogany table. My chest tightened, but I kept my face calm, my eyes locked on the pink gift box I'd brought for Emily, its ribbon curling like a promise I couldn't keep. The guests avoided my gaze, except for Melanie Green, the school principal, who watched with a faint, amused smirk, her phone glowing in her lap. Elizabeth's always been so involved, Melanie said, her tone dripping with condescension. She sipped her wine, her eyes flickering to Caitlin. A neighbor coughed, another whispered. Didn't she pay for this house? The words stung, a reminder of the sacrifices they'd never acknowledge. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping softly against the hardwood. I only wanted to help, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. Emily reached for my hand, her small fingers warm against mine. Grandma, stay, she pleaded, but Caitlin pulled her back, her grip firm. Sweetie, Grandma's tired, she said, her smile ablaze. Then Jason stood, his chair creaking. You're not needed here, Mom, he said, his words echoing in the silence. My kids don't need you. We've got this. The room spun, the chandelier's light blurring into a haze. Melanie's smirk widened, and a guest dropped their fork, the clatter deafening. I folded my napkin, my movements slow, deliberate. My heart pounded, but I wouldn't let them see it. I picked up Emily's gift, the tissue paper crinkling under my fingers, and walked to the door. The guests' whispers followed me, a chorus of pity and curiosity. In the foyer, I paused, the weight of the box grounding me. I set it on the console table, the ribbon catching the light like a fading dream. Outside, the November air bit at my skin. I slid into my car, the leather seat cold against my back. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles whitening. The radio hummed to life, some song about breaking free, its irony bitter. I stared at Jason's house, its windows glowing with warmth I'd never feel again. A memory surfaced, sharp and unbidden. 20 years ago, I'd sat at my kitchen table, a travel brochure for Paris in one hand, a bill for Jason's college tuition in the other. I'd chosen him, always him, my savings, my dreams, my everything. I'd worked double shifts, skipped vacations, also he could have a future. And now? He'd tossed me aside like a used tissue. My breath hitched, but I swallowed the ache. No tears. Not tonight. I turned the key, the engine rumbling to life. In the rearview mirror, the house shrank, its lights fading. My lips moved, barely audible, a vow to myself. They'll regret this. I drove into the dark, the gift box left behind, its ribbon fluttering in the quiet. The photo frame sat heavy in my hands, its cracked glass catching the morning light. Jason, age 10, grinned up at me, his gap-toothed smile frozen in time. The kitchen table was cluttered with unpaid bills and a cold cup of black coffee. No sugar, a change I hadn't noticed until now. My house, modest compared to Jason's, smelled of stale toast and regret. The ticking clock on the wall marked the hours since last night's disaster, each second a reminder of his words. You're not needed. I set the frame down, my fingers tracing the splintered edge. A memory clawed its way up. Jason was 16, his father freshly buried. I'd turned down a promotion, better pay, better hours, to stay home, to be there when he woke from nightmares. He'd hug me then, his voice muffled against my shoulder. I'll never forget this, Mom. Lies, I thought, now, my jaw tightening. I stood, the chair creaking under me, and crossed to the desk. A shoebox of papers waited, its lid warped from years of neglect. Inside, I found it, a yellowed receipt for Jason's college tuition, my signature scrawled at the bottom. I'd sold my car to cover the last payment, walked to work for a year. For him. My fingers curled around the paper, crumpling its edges. Enough. I grabbed my coat and drove to the local library, the one place I could think clearly. The building was a relic, its wooden floors groaning underfoot, the air thick with the scent of old books. Susan, the librarian, looked up from her desk, her glasses slipping down her nose. "Liz, you look different," she said, her voice soft but curious. I forced a smile, my bag heavy with purpose. "Just hunting for truth, Susan." She nodded, pointing me to the microfiche machines. I spent hours there, the hum of the machine drowning out the world. Articles flickered across the screen. Budget cuts at Emily's school, a failed audit, whispers of mismanagement. One name kept appearing, Melanie Green. Another article mentioned a lawsuit against the school, dismissed but damning. My pen scratched across my notebook, the words corruption and Melanie underlined twice. Susan paused by my table, a stack of books in her arms. "Heard Caitlin was bragging about a new car last week," she said, her tone casual. "Odd, with the school's budget so tight." My pulse quickened, but I kept my face neutral. "Interesting," I murmured, my mind racing. Caitlin and Melanie, exchanging glances last night. They were hiding something. I pulled out my phone and dialed Tom, an old colleague who could sniff out bad numbers like a bloodhound. "Liz, what's this about?" he asked, his voice gruff but warm. "I need your eyes, Tom," I said, my tone sharp. "Something's rotten at Emily's school. Can you dig into their finances?" He paused, then chuckled. "You sound like a detective." "I'm in." As I hung up, a group of kids ran past the library window, their laughter slicing through me. Emily's face flashed in my mind, her small hand reaching for mine. I gripped my pen tighter, the ink smudging under my thumb. Back at my notebook, I flipped to a new page and wrote, "The school's their weak spot." The article about the lawsuit stared up at me, Melanie's name bolded in the text. My lips curved, not quite a smile. I copied the lawyer's name, Robert Klein, and tucked the paper into my bag. The library clock chimed, and I stood, my steps lighter than they'd been in years. Outside, the wind carried the promise of a storm. The cafe buzzed with the hiss of the espresso machine, the clatter of cups, and the low hum of conversation. I sat at a corner table, my notebook open, my fingers tapping a restless rhythm against the chipped wood. The smell of fresh pastries clung to the air, but my coffee sat untouched, steam curling upward. Tom was late, but I didn't mind. The notes in front of me, names, dates, numbers, were pieces of a puzzle I was finally starting to solve. A memory flickered. The day I handed Jason the deed to his house, my hands trembling with pride. "For you and the kids," I'd said, picturing Emily and Jack growing up there. He'd hugged me, his eyes bright. "This means everything, Mom." Now that house was just another thing he'd taken for granted. Tom slid into the seat across from me, his gray hair disheveled, a folder tucked under his arm. "Liz, you're stirring up trouble," he said, but his grin betrayed his excitement. He opened the folder, spreading papers across the table. "The school's financials? A mess. Parent committee funds, thousands, vanishing into charitable donations. No receipts, no records." I leaned forward, my eyes scanning the numbers. "Who's signing off on this?" Tom pointed to a signature, Melanie Green. My pulse quickened. "And Caitlin's on the committee," I said, my voice low. "She's in on it." Tom whistled. "This is big, Liz. You sure you want to poke this bear?" "I'm sure," I said, my tone cold. I glanced out the window, where a young mother pushed a stroller, her laughter mingling with her kids. Emily's face flashed again, and I gripped my pen tighter. "I need proof, Tom. Hard evidence." He nodded, promising to dig deeper. I left the cafe and drove to the school, my heart steady but my mind racing. The building loomed, its brick facade hiding secrets. I'd called ahead, offering to volunteer in the archives. Nobody questioned a grandmother's good intentions. Mrs. Pearson, the secretary, waved me in with a distracted smile. "Just don't make a mess, Elizabeth," she said, her eyes on her phone. The archive room was a tomb of dust and paper, lit by a flickering bulb. I worked fast, my fingers flipping through files. Budget reports, donation logs, checks, most stamped with Melanie's name. One folder caught my eye. Charity fund. Inside, I found checks made out to a vague community trust, signed by Caitlin. The dates didn't match the school's public reports. My breath caught. This was it. I snapped photos with my phone, my hand steady despite the adrenaline. Footsteps echoed outside and I froze. Melanie's voice drifted through the door, sharp and impatient. I slipped the folder back, my heart pounding, and busied myself with a stack of old flyers. She didn't enter, but her presence lingered like a threat. Mrs. Pearson poked her head in later, her voice casual. "Oh, Elizabeth, did you hear? Jason was here yesterday talking to a realtor. Something about selling that big house of his." My stomach dropped, but I kept my face blank. "Really?" I said, my voice even. "That's surprising. The house I'd given him. The one I'd poured my life into. Gone just like that." I left the school, the photos burning a hole in my phone. In my car I stared at the dashboard, my hands trembling. Jason's betrayal cut deeper than I'd expected, but I shoved the pain down. My lips curved a faint, dangerous smile. I opened my notebook and wrote, "They're running out of time." The engine roared to life and I pulled away, the school shrinking in my rearview mirror. Tom's office smelled of ink and old paper, the kind of scent that clung to your clothes. I stood by his desk, my fingers brushing the edge of a folder stuffed with notes. The fluorescent light flickered, casting shadows over stacks of files and a dusty computer humming in the corner. Wednesday, 5 days since Jason's words, "You're not needed," had carved a hole in me. I pushed the memory down, focusing on the numbers Tom slid across the desk. "Jason's drowning, Liz," Tom said, his voice gravelly, his tie loosened like he'd given up on the day. "$1 million in debt. Bad investments in car dealerships. Banks are circling." He tapped a spreadsheet, red ink screaming losses. My son, the man I'd raised, was crumbling under his own arrogance. I scanned the figures, my pulse steady. "He's selling the house to cover it?" I asked, my tone flat though my chest tightened. "The house I'd gifted him, every brick paid for with my sweat." Tom nodded, leaning back in his creaking chair. "That's the rumor. You sure you want to dig into this, Liz?" "It's messy." "Messy's fine," I said, my eyes narrowing. He made his choices. Jason's debts were a crack in his armor, a lever I could pull. I tucked the spreadsheet into my bag, the paper crinkling like a promise. Later, I sat in a dim bar downtown, the kind with sticky tables and a TV blaring sports. The air smelled of beer and fried onions, and I nursed a soda, pretending to read a newspaper. Across the room, Rick, Jason's business partner, slouched at the counter, his voice loud, slurred. "Jason thinks selling that house will save him," he scoffed to the barman Joe, who nodded absently. "He's a fool. Borrowed from some shady lender, too. He's done." My grip tightened on the glass, the cold biting my palm. A memory hit. Jason and I years ago, painting the walls of that house after my husband's death. He was 20, his hands speckled with white paint, promising, "This stays in the family, Mom. For my kids." I believed him, my heart full. Now he was tossing it away like trash. I shifted closer, my newspaper a shield. Rick tossed a business card on the counter, the name of a lender scrawled on it. I snapped a photo with my phone, my hand steady despite the fire in my veins. Joe, wiping a glass, muttered, "Heard the school's parent committee's bleeding money too." Same crowd. My ears pricked, but I kept my face blank. In the bar's mirror I caught my reflection, gray streaks in my hair, eyes sharp as knives. I smoothed a strand, my jaw set. Rick stumbled out, leaving the card behind. I swiped it, the paper warm from the counter. Outside, the Chicago wind howled, matching the storm inside me. I pulled out my notebook, the pen scratching. "His debts are my leverage." A neon sign flickered across the street, its buzz loud in the quiet. Before you continue listening to this story, please click on the subscribe button. Let's get 1,000 subscribers by the end of this week. Andrew's office was all glass and polish, the desk gleaming under the city skyline framed by a panoramic window. I sat across from him, a folder of financial documents between us, the air cool with the hum of an air conditioner. Friday, a week since the fight, and my hands were steady, my navy blazer modest but crisp. Andrew, his salt and pepper hair neatly combed, raised an eyebrow. "Liz, this is your entire nest egg. You sure?" "I'm sure," I said, my voice calm though my heart raced. I'd hidden these savings for years, skipping trips, mending clothes, all to secure my future. Now they'd secure something else. Control. Andrew slid a contract across the desk, outlining a shell company to invest in Emily's school. "This buys you a stake," he said. Quietly. "Nobody'll trace it to you." I signed, the pen gliding smoothly. A memory flickered. Late nights balancing my checkbook, choosing Jason's needs over my own. A new coat a weekend away. I'd saved every penny, believing it was for family. Now it was my weapon. That evening I slipped into the school's parent meeting, my hair tucked under a scarf, my seat in the back row. The room smelled of dry erase markers, plastic chairs squeaking under restless parents. Caitlin stood at the front, her smile tight, defending a new fee hike. "It's for the kids' programs," she insisted, her voice sharp as a blade. Parents muttered, one snapping. "We're not a bank, Caitlin." I scribbled notes, my pen swift. Caitlin's PowerPoint flickered, numbers not adding up. I snapped a photo, my phone hidden in my lap. A child's drawing lay on the floor nearby, crayon flowers like the ones Emily used to make. My throat tightened, but I refocused, catching Caitlin's nervous glance at her phone. A father in front leaned forward, his voice low. "Heard there's a new investor sniffing around. Someone with deep pockets." Caitlin's smile faltered, her hand jerking, spilling water across her notes. Parents chuckled, but I stayed still, my pulse quickening. They didn't know it was me. Andrew's text buzzed my phone. "Transfer complete. You're in." I slipped out, the meeting's noise fading behind me. In the parking lot, the night air was sharp, the stars hidden by city lights. I leaned against my car, a faint smile curving my lips. "First move made," I whispered, my breath visible in the cold. A distant car door slammed, its echo sharp in the dark. The school hallway smelled of floor wax and toner. The printer's hum a steady drone. I knelt by a stack of papers outside Melanie's office, my volunteer badge clipped to my sweater, my hands sorting files with practiced ease. Tuesday, 10 days since Jason's betrayal. And the shouts from inside the office were a gift I hadn't expected. Melanie's voice cut through the door, brittle with rage. "This investor's prying too deep, Caitlin. We can't let them ruin us." Caitlin's reply was shrill, panicked. "We cut the arts program, blame the budget. No big deal, notice." My fingers paused, hovering over a folder. I slipped my phone from my pocket, the record button glowing red. The door was ajar, just enough to catch their words. But I stayed low, a stack of flyers my cover. Melanie slammed something, a mug, maybe on her desk. "Get it together," she hissed. "We'll redirect the funds, like always." My heart pounded, the phone heavy in my hand. This was gold, raw and damning, even if the audio crackled with static. I stood, smoothing my skirt, and slipped the phone away. Later, in the park across from the school, I leaned against an oak, its bark rough under my palm. The air smelled of cut grass, G-swings creaking as kids played. Emily was there, her ponytail bouncing as she drew with chalk on the pavement. My chest ached, a memory rising. Nights reading her fairy tales, her small hand in mine. My promise to always be there. I'd meant it. She looked up, her eyes catching mine. "Grandma," she called, her voice bright. My breath caught, but Caitlin swooped in, pulling her away. "Come on, sweetie," she said, not seeing me. I stayed behind the tree, my jaw tight, the chalk drawing, a lopsided heart, burning into my mind. Back home, I sent the recording to Tom, my fingers steady as I typed. "Analyze this," I said when he answered, his voice groggy. "It's them panicking." He promised to clean the audio, but his next words stopped me cold. "Liz, I heard something else. Melanie's forging papers, planning to pin the missing funds on a teacher. She's covering her tracks." I sat on my couch, the worn fabric cool against my legs. My notebook lay open, the words they're slipping scrawled across the page. Melanie's plan was desperate, a crack in their facade I could widen. My lips curved, a quiet resolve settling in. I stood, the floor creaking underfoot, and moved to the window. Outside, a street light buzzed, its glow flickering in the dusk. The school boardroom smelled of chalk and polished wood, the kind of scent that lingered from decades of debates. I sat in the corner, my volunteer badge pinned to my cardigan, a folder of carefully crafted proposals in my lap. Thursday, 2 weeks since Jason's betrayal, and the air buzzed with tension. Wooden chairs creaked as parents and board members shifted, their faces lit by the dim glow of an overhead projector. Melanie Green stood at the front, her smile as tight as her blazer, while Caitlin hovered nearby, her fingers twitching. I'd spent the morning whispering to parents in the hallway, planting seeds of doubt about the school's finances. "Those fees keep climbing, don't they?" I'd said, my tone mild, my eyes sympathetic. Now, as Mr. Brown, the board chair, cleared his throat, I leaned forward, my pen poised over my notebook. "We need transparency," I said, my voice soft but clear, cutting through the murmurs. An independent audit could ease everyone's minds. I slid my report across the table to Mr. Brown, its pages crisp, the numbers damning but presented as helpful suggestions. Melanie's eyes narrowed, her knuckles whitening around her pen. "That's unnecessary," she said, her voice clipped. "Our books are open." Caitlin jumped in, her tone sharp. "You don't get it, Elizabeth. We're doing everything for this school." Her words sparked grumbles from the parents, one muttering, "Then why's my kid's art class gone?" I stayed silent, my face neutral, but my pulse raced. The room was turning, and they felt it. Mr. Brown adjusted his glasses, his voice hesitant. "Elizabeth's idea has merit. Let's vote next meeting." Melanie's smile faltered, and Caitlin tore a corner of her notes, the rip loud in the quiet. I caught a parent's nod, a small victory. In the cafe later, the scent of cinnamon and coffee grounded me. I sat by the window. My notebook open, names of allies underlined, Brown, Carter, and Gwynn. A memory surfaced. Years ago, negotiating a bank loan for Jason's first business. I'd sat across from a smug manager, my voice steady, my hands shaking under the table. I'd won then, sacrificing my savings for him. Now I was fighting for me. My phone buzzed, Tom, with new evidence of Melanie's doctored receipts. I didn't open it, not yet. Outside, Melanie's car pulled up, her silhouette sharp as she yelled into her phone. I sipped my coffee, my lips curving. In the boardroom, she'd whispered to Caitlin, her voice low, venomous. "Someone here's against us." The cafe door chimed, a gust of cool air brushing my neck. Andrew's office was a fortress of glass, the Chicago skyline sprawling beyond the windows. I sat across from him, my fingers tracing the edge of a contract, the ink still fresh. Monday, 3 weeks since the fight, and my navy suit felt like armor, though my eyes burned with fatigue. The air smelled of leather and ambition, the scratch of Andrew's pen the only sound. "Liz, you're buying the school," he said, his voice half admiring, half wary. "This controlling stake, it's insanity." "It's my chance," I said, my tone firm. I signed the final page, the pen heavy, my savings now a weapon. The shell company was mine, untraceable, giving me power over the school's future. Andrew shook his head, sliding an email across the desk. "Melanie's hired a PI to sniff out the investor. Be careful." I nodded, my jaw tight. Later, I stood by the school's fence, the playground alive with kids' laughter. The grass was damp from morning rain, the air sharp with autumn. Jack, my 5-year-old grandson, kicked a soccer ball, his cheeks flushed. A memory hit. Teaching him to ride a bike, my hands steady on the seat, his giggles echoing. "You won't let me fall, Grandma," he'd said. I hadn't. Miss Larson, his teacher, paused nearby, her voice low. "Caitlin's furious, says someone's meddling with the school's plans." I smiled faintly, my notebook open, jotting Jack's schedule. "That's a shame," I said, my tone neutral. She sighed. "They cut the sports budget too. Parents are livid." Jack glanced my way, his hand half raised, uncertain. My heart twisted, but I stayed still, hidden by the fence. I called Tom, my voice low. "Get the board papers ready. We're close." He grunted agreement, the line crackling. Back in Andrew's office, the email from the PI glowed on his screen, probing my company's origins. My fingers tightened around my bag, the contract inside a ticking bomb. I stepped into the elevator, the doors sliding shut with a soft hiss. Outside, a car's engine growled, too close for comfort. My living room was dim, the floorboards creaking under my steps. I stood before the mirror, pages of my speech trembling in my hands, the words sharp as blades. Wednesday, for weeks since Jason's words, "You're not needed," and I was ready to prove him wrong. The air smelled of cedar from the old wardrobe behind me, its doors ajar, a dark suit hanging inside, unworn for years. "You thought I was weak?" I said to my reflection, my voice low, steady. "Watch me." I'd spent the morning highlighting my speech, each line a strike against Melanie and Caitlin. The USB in my pocket held the evidence, recordings, receipts, proof of their theft. Outside, Mrs. Evans, my neighbor, watered her roses, her voice drifting through the window. "Heard the school director's losing it, Liz. Looking for a traitor." I paused, my pen still. "Good to know." I called back, my tone light, but my pulse quickened. In Tom's office later, the air was thick with the hum of a copier and the scent of toner. We pored over documents, the recording's transcript spread between us. "This is dynamite, Liz," Tom said, his glasses slipping. "But it's dangerous. They're cornered." I nodded, my fingers tracing a forged check. "Let them squirm," I said, my voice cold. A memory surfaced. My friend Clara, years ago. Turning away when I poured everything into Jason's dreams. "You're throwing your life away," she'd said, her voice bitter. I'd chosen him, lost her, and now he'd discarded me. The ache lingered, but I shoved it down. Focusing on the papers. My phone rang, an unknown number. A voice low and icy cut through. "Back off or you'll regret it." My breath caught, but I blocked the number, scribbling it in my notebook. Mrs. Evans's words echoed. "A stranger near the school." I glanced at a photo on my desk, Emily and Jack smiling, their faces fuel for my fire. I tucked the USB deeper into my pocket, the weight grounding me. The front door clicked as I stepped out, the evening air sharp against my skin. Before you continue listening to this story, please click on the subscribe button. Let's get 1,000 subscribers by the end of this week. The backstage air was thick with the scent of polished wood and dust, the hum of the auditorium seeping through the velvet curtain. I stood in the shadows, my fingers curled around a USB drive, its edges biting into my palm. Friday evening, 5 weeks since Jason's words, "You're not needed," and my heart pounded but my steps were steady. The General Assembly waited beyond, a sea of parents, teachers, and board members, their voices a restless murmur. I adjusted my blazer, the fabric crisp against my skin, and checked my laptop. The slides were ready. Forged checks, doctor budgets, the grainy recording of Melanie and Caitlin's panic. My speech, memorized, burned in my mind. A memory flickered. Last night, alone in my kitchen, staring at Emily's crayon drawing of a house, her stick figure family smiling. I'd almost backed out, fear whispering I'd lose her forever. But her face, her trust, pushed me forward. The curtain parted and I stepped onto the stage, the spotlight harsh. The room fell silent, chairs creaking as eyes turned to me. Melanie sat in the front row, her smile frozen, Caitlin beside her, her fingers twisting a pen. Mr. Brown, the board chair, nodded from the side, his expression curious. "I'm Elizabeth Crawford," I said, my voice clear, echoing off the walls. "And I'm the new majority owner of this school." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Melanie's face drained of color, her pen clattering to the floor. Caitlin leapt up, her voice shrill. "You can't do this." I held her gaze, my tone ice. "You said I was nobody. Now I decide." I clicked the projector and the first slide glowed. A check signed by Melanie, the numbers mismatched. Then the recording, her voice crackling. "Redirect the funds like always." The crowd murmured, parents leaning forward. Melanie stammered, "This is slander. I'll sue." But her words drowned in the growing uproar. Caitlin lunged toward the stage, her face twisted. "You're ruining everything." I stepped forward, my voice cutting through. "You ruined yourselves." I handed Mr. Brown a letter, my hand steady. "Melanie Green is fired, effective immediately." The room erupted in applause, a wave of sound that shook the air. A father shouted, "Finally, someone's telling the truth." Miss Larson in the back winked at me. Melanie grabbed her phone, dropping it in her haste, and Caitlin stormed out, shoving chairs aside. "This isn't over," she hissed, pausing to whisper to a man in a dark coat by the door. His eyes met mine, cold and unfamiliar. I left the stage, the applause ringing in my ears, my hand slipping into my pocket to touch the photo of Emily and Jack. The hallway outside was quiet, the air cool against my flushed skin. Footsteps echoed behind me, sharp and deliberate. The school courtyard buzzed with Monday morning energy, kids darting across the freshly painted playground, their laughter sharp in the crisp air. I walked through the gate, a folder of new policies under my arm, the weight of my new role school owner settling over me. Parents nodded as I passed, one stopping to shake my hand. "You've changed everything," he said, his voice gruff. Across the yard, Caitlin stood by the fence, her eyes avoiding mine, her coat buttoned tight. Miss Larson approached, her smile warm, Emily and Jack trailing behind. Emily's ponytail bounced as she ran to me, her arms wrapping around my waist. "Grandma, are you the boss now?" she asked, her eyes wide. I laughed, ruffling her hair. "Just making the school better, sweetheart." Jack shy tugged my sleeve, a soccer ball under his arm. "Can we play?" he mumbled. My chest warmed, the ache of weeks apart fading. We kicked the ball, Jack's giggles echoing as he tripped, smearing dirt on my skirt. Emily sketched with chalk nearby, her tongue poking out in focus. A memory hit. Nights before the assembly, pacing my room, terrified Emily and Jack would hate me for appending their world. I'd clutched their photo, whispering, "Please don't turn away." Now their smiles were my anchor. The school bell rang, and Miss Larson ushered the kids inside. She leaned close, her voice low. "Caitlin's been looking at flights to Seattle. Might be leaving soon." I nodded, my face neutral but my pulse quickened. Caitlin running. Typical. Later at my house, the smell of fresh cookies filled the air, toys scattered across the rug. Emily and Jack sprawled on the couch, arguing over a puzzle. The doorbell rang and my stomach tightened. Jason stood there, his suit rumpled, his eyes red. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "I messed up. I'm sorry." His shoulders slumped, the man who dismissed me now small, broken. I crossed my arms, the door half closed. "Your kids need you to change, Jason. Not me." His face fell, but he nodded, stepping back. I shut the door, my hand lingering on the knob, the click loud in the quiet. Emily's voice called from the living room. "Grandma, look." She held up a drawing. A bright school, me at the center labeled hero. I smiled, tucking the paper into my pocket. The phone buzzed, a text from Miss Larson. "Caitlin's packing. Gone by week's end." Outside, the wind rattled the windows, a storm brewing on the horizon. My new office in the school was small but bright, sunlight spilling across the wooden desk where a fresh bouquet of daisies sat, a gift from the staff. I leaned back in my chair, flipping through a budget report. The numbers balanced for the first time in years. Friday, 2 months since the assembly, and the school was thriving. Art classes restored, fees lowered. A new sign out front reading for all. The air smelled of flowers and promise, the distant laughter of kids drifting through the open window. Emily burst in, her backpack swinging. "Grandma, the art room's so cool now," she said, plopping into a chair. She chattered about her painting class, funded by my reforms, her hands waving. I handed her a new set of watercolors, her eyes lighting up. "For you," I said, my voice soft. She hugged me, her warmth a balm. A memory surfaced. Me at 20 dreaming of opening a school, a place where every kid could shine. I'd shelved that dream for Jason, for family, my sketches of classrooms gathering dust. Now at 54 I'd done it. Not for glory but for Emily, Jack, and every child here. At the school festival later, the courtyard was alive with color balloons bobbing. The sizzle of hot dogs on a grill. Parents mingled, thanking me for the changes. Mr. Brown approached, his tie crooked. "Elizabeth, we're naming the new scholarship fund after you," he said, beaming. I shook my head, smiling. "Call it the Future Fund. It's for them." He nodded, respect in his eyes. Miss Harris, the new principal I'd appointed, joined us, her voice warm. "You've turned this place around, Mrs. Crawford." I shrugged, my gaze on Emily, who ran past with a pinwheel. Word had spread. Jason and Caitlin had moved to Seattle, starting over, their influence gone. Melanie's lawsuit had collapsed, her reputation in ruins. A little girl pressed a daisy into my hand, her grin shy. I tucked it behind my ear, the petals soft. Standing by the swings, I pulled Emily's drawing from my pocket. Kids holding hands, a bright sun above. My fingers traced the lines, my heart steady, full. Justice at last. The festival's music swelled, a joyful note carrying into the evening sky. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like this video and click on the subscribe button. Let's get 1,000 subscribers on this channel by the end of the week, so that as many people as possible can learn about this story. We also recommend listening to our previous story. It is even more shocking. Just click on the box on the left to play it. Thank you for watching.